New tariffs are hitting businesses hard. Gartner says 92% of supply chain leaders cite rising costs as top concern, and 75% are worried about falling demand. So, how are businesses adapting? Joining us now is Abhijit Nagendranath from SG Analytics and Pilar Dieter from YCP. Pilar and Abhijit, welcome onto our topic. Why are increased costs the most cited tariff risk? Pilar, would you like to answer first?
Basic laws of economics dictate that tariffs really function as a tax on consumers. So, industries that are reliant on imports, like automotive, apparel, footwear, those are especially exposed. But tariffs on things such as steel, aluminum, semiconductors, those are driving up production costs. So, ultimately, we're starting to see that increased costs are inevitable across all nodes of the value chain.
So the immediate financial strain is why it's often the first and most visible concern. I think second, where you have to understand is that um, supply chains today across most enterprises have fairly optimized for both cost and efficiency. The cascading effect of all of this is that now the tariff is not just one single cost item, right? It's compounded throughout the entire production process. So amplifying the cost across the supply chain is the second biggest reason why increased costs are the most cited risk. And finally, your entire supply chain, production, manufacturing is there is a whole lot of unpredictability right now. And then that leads to an inability to forecast correctly. This increases your risk premiums. This increases your ability to figure out how much is it that you're going to be able to sell on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis.
So, with the slowing demand cited as a concern, how can manufacturers adjust?
In the quarter following Liberation Day, a lot of manufacturers had resisted the urge to increase prices, but more clients of mine are seeing this as inevitable and now are applying changes to their pricing. Now, to be clear, this does vary by sector. If we take a look at polls from global data, it indicates that some of the major companies that have already changed prices or intend to include companies like Walmart, Ford, Adidas, Microsoft, and Shein. So it's not exclusive to consumer and retail. You ask, how can they adjust? There's some basic obvious ways to do so. One is seek alternative sources of supply or explore transshipment options to avoid those high tariff regions. But those aren't always so easy to do. And some of the more transformative ways companies are seeking to become less fragile to these swinging tides of trade include more creative modifications to their business operations.
So for manufacturing, leveraging AI, leveraging analytics, for more precise demand sensing, these can be applied to develop more sophisticated, as real time as possible demand sensing models. You can analyze this huge data sets, which include a variety of data sets, actually. It could be market trends, it could be consumer sentiment, it could be microeconomic indicators, and then this can be maybe weeks ahead or months ahead of traditional forecasting methods. So it's almost like an early warning system that allows for proactive adjustment of production schedules, understanding inventory levels, and therefore it just gives them a little more time to adjust. And then we've talked enough about AI, but the entire predictive maintenance, the entire quality control systems, all of this can also be automated using tech, right? And this helps offset a lot of input costs through improved efficiency. And finally, when you have no other option, diversification. Analytics can help you evaluate alternative suppliers. It can be not just on one lever, which is cost, but a bunch of levers coming together, which is cost, quality, reliability, total cost of which gives you a total cost of ownership.
So, given this as a workaround, how can businesses balance cost recovery with customer retention?
Some of the ways that companies are trying to ensure they're balancing their cost recovery is through exploring collaboration opportunities with their suppliers. I have one client in the automotive manufacturing space, a component manufacturer, who's currently working with a Chinese-based supplier and trying to figure out ways to create a joint venture with possibly establishing manufacturing closer to home, maybe in Mexico or South America. So in terms of balancing that cost recovery with retention, customer retention ultimately is a real issue. And particularly in the retail sector, where we're seeing retailers with greater power in being able to measure product switching, a lot of these retailers are feeling emboldened to try and promote more of their self-branded product and delist some of the other brands that have no choice but to hike up their prices. So this ultimately has longer term impact on retention of the customer.
So there might be customers who are more okay with with absorbing a bit of cost, while there are groups of customers who would want to switch immediately. So one of the first things to do is a sophisticated customer segmentation. However granular you can grow with your customer analytics, this will help you understand what the different groupings of these customers are, and therefore who would be more price sensitive to switching costs than some of the other groupings. You can have extended payment terms. That would help customers who would want that to help them with their business payments. And then finally, bundling of services. This has been something that manufacturers have been focusing on for long. But a highly sophisticated customer segmentation will help you decide who are those customers who are, or customer segments rather, who are more open to accepting service bundling, right? Finally, a lot of this will depend on relationship managers, which is why account managers become so much more important in these times. I think it's imperative that manufacturers remember that account managers play a really important role even in times of downturn, because they are the ones who are deeply connected to the customers. They have to figure out that each customer segment needs a different approach, needs a different messaging, needs a different solution. So once they do these segmentations, they can then, for each of these segments, take a different approach and rely on their account managers to go and sell that new approach to their customers.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your insights, Abhijit and Pilar.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on board.
Thank you for having us.
Once again, those were Abhijit Nagendranath, Vice President of Data Analytics at SG Analytics, and Pilar Dieter, Managing Partner and CEO of YCP Management Services Division. For more news, visit manufacturing.asia.